Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today, EQT Private Equity Company LLC just filed an 8K about unregistered sales of equity securities, and I'm seeing a few things that tell a story about their growth strategy. Quick note, this is not financial advice, just my take on public filings for educational purposes. The company has been selling shares to investors, and the details of these sales give us a glimpse into how they are funding their operations and growth. So what exactly is happening here? EQT Private Equity Company LLC, which we'll just call EQT Private Equity, filed this report because they've sold shares of their company to investors. This isn't a public stock offering where anyone can buy on an exchange. Instead, it is a private sale, which means they sold these shares directly to specific investors, likely those who meet certain financial qualifications. The main point of this filing is to report on unregistered sales of equity securities. Think of it like this: when a company wants to raise money, they can either sell stock on a public market like the New York Stock Exchange, or they can go to specific investors and sell shares. Directly, this filing is about that second scenario. They sold shares that didn't go through the usual registration process with the government, which is allowed under certain rules, like Section C, I or Regulation D, which are designed for private placements to accredited investors, or for sales outside the US. Now let's look at the numbers. EQT Private Equity sold quite a bit of stock. On the 1st of August 2026, they sold shares to investors for about $16.6 million. The price of these shares is based on something called transactional net asset value per share. This is a fancy way of saying the price is tied to the actual value of the company's assets at a certain point in time. They broke down the sales by different classes of shares. For example, they sold 273,334 shares of Class I, bringing in over $8.2 million. They also sold Class J1 and Class J2 shares, along with a significant number of Class S shares, which brought in another $6.6 million. In total, they sold about 606,390 shares for that $16.6 million. It is important to note that the final number of shares sold was confirmed on the 19th of August 2026, after they calculated the precise net asset value as of the 31st of July 2026. This just means they are careful about the pricing and make sure it reflects the company's true value at the time of the sale. This is a really significant number. Since they started this private offering on the 1st of July 2025, EQT Private Equity has raised over $833 million. This shows they are actively growing and using private capital to fund their expansion. It is a massive amount of money, indicating strong investor confidence and a substantial ongoing operation. The other key piece of information here is about the transactional net asset value per share. This is what the company uses to price its shares for these private sales. On the 19th of August 2026, their manager, EQT Partners Incorporated, figured out these values as of the 31st of July 2026. Here is a look at some of those values. Per share for different classes. Class I shares were valued at $30.15. Class S shares were valued at $25.12. And Class J1 and J2 shares were around $25.13. They also have other classes like A, I, AD, AJ1, AJ2, ACE, H, EQ, and T with their own net asset values, ranging from about $29.1 to $31.6. It is interesting to see the different values for each class reflecting different terms, rights, or perhaps different investment stages. It is worth noting that as of the 31st of July 2026, there were no Class D shares outstanding. Finally, they reference an exhibit, Exhibit 99.1, which contains the net asset value as of the 31st of July 2026. This is where you can find the full breakdown of all the share classes and their precise net asset values. So, what is the story here? EQT Private Equity is actively raising significant capital through private placements, totaling over $833 million since mid-2025. They are using a transactional net asset value to price these shares, which is a common practice for private funds to ensure fair pricing based on the underlying assets. The recent sale of $16.6 million worth of shares, with the final pricing confirmed in August, shows their continued engagement with investors and their ongoing fundraising efforts. What I am looking at here is a company that is clearly in a growth phase, aggressively seeking and securing substantial private investment. The variety of share classes and their respective net asset values suggest a complex but managed fund structure designed to cater to different investor needs. The sheer amount of capital raised points to a strong market appetite for EQT Private Equity's offerings. The risk I am watching is always with these private placements. While they are exempt from public registration, it is crucial for investors to do their due diligence to understand the specific terms and risks associated with each share class. The company is growing rapidly, and managing that growth efficiently while maintaining value for investors is key. Oh, and the research tools I actually use are linked in the description. They help keep this channel going. That is my take. Stay decoded. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description.